Okay, so before we get into the video, just in case anybody's come into YouTube or something like that and found the video and have not looked in the context, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview. So the purpose of this video is to explain how the workflow could work in a fabricated translation office that I just made up. And the idea is that I have 4 offices, one in Italy, one in France, one in Germany, one in Spain. And I've got a localization office that could be anywhere. And essentially I'm working from, initially anyway, from the localization office. So the idea is that I would create my Trotter Studio projects in the localization office. I'd copy those bilingual files over to the translation offices so they could do their translation work. And while they're getting on with that, I would create my map files for the perfect match so that after I receive the translated bilingual files back and they're available somewhere, and I receive an updated source file from my client, I can then use those map files to run a perfect match. So that's essentially what I'm going to try to mimic in this workflow that I've just made up. And the other thing I wanted to explain to you is that I'm using Total Commander, which is essentially File Explorer. So if you're wondering what this application is, I think there's a free Commander as well, which is it's a free version you can use, but I've been using Total Commander a long time, so I'll stick with this. And the idea is that I have like a Windows Explorer over here on the left hand side, and I have another window on my files on the right hand side. So on the right hand side here, seeing as I'm in there, you can see I'm looking at my desktop, and on the left hand side I'm looking at the location of my Trotter Studio projects. So I'm the localization engineer working in my localization office. Now to mimic this, because I'm doing it all on my own computer, I've actually mocked up locations for where these files are going to go for the different offices, all within my drive. But this whole process, if you had a network drive set up, the same thing could occur by sending the files to the network drives. I'm just not working like that in this example. So on my desktop, I've put all the files that I'm going to need here. So I have a source folder, and this just contains some files that I'm going to be translating. So source files just when I have 3 files. It's also containing files in folders. So the same source files, but this time I've nested them inside some folders just to show you how it might work if the project came in a nested arrangement, because that's probably a bit more realistic. I then have a folder containing the updated source files. In practice I wouldn't have those yet, but I've got them now because I'm going to use them for the demonstration. So what I've done there, same thing, files and folders, but these files are actually updated. They contain updated content, so they're not the same as the original ones. I've added some additional sentences and I've changed some of the words. I then have a folder for the localization office, which is my office. And in here, it's empty at the moment. But in this location, this is where I'm going to store my map files. And then I have translation offices, and I have one for each country. I'll just look into one of them, but they're all the same. So inside France, I have my new projects, and then I have where the projects will actually be stored. It's empty at the moment because I haven't created any yet. That's what the script is going to do for me when we run it as part of this process. And then, just so you know, I mentioned in the blog article that it took me quite a few iterations to get the script right. So you can see I'm down to 1.0.1.2 for getting my paths. And if I look at the script history, there's all my variations, and you can see the file was getting gradually bigger as we were going along. I've also got a couple of CMD files here in case you happen to see them. And one of them is the reset folders, which just wipes all of the content in my translation office and my localization office, so that while I was testing I could very quickly remove everything else without having to keep going in and out of the folders. So that was just a simple DOS script. And this is the version of the script I'm going to be running, my get paths, just to show you very quickly what it looks like. I'm not going to go into loads of details. This could definitely be improved, but basically the idea is that first of all I define the base path where I want my translation office and localization office to be, so that's where they are. I didn't include all the details, I didn't need to, because each one is going to be different, and I use the language codes to store things here and there and to make a bit of sense out of it. So we map the language codes. I then copy I have a function to copy the language folders. I have a function to determine the destination based on the language code. I create the destination directory if it's not there already. I copy the whole folders over from my project folders. I rename them so that they're more applicable to the offices that we go to. You'll see all this in a minute where I've renamed the files as part of the script. And then lastly, I generate map files for each language, and then I have the actual codes for the main logic for all of that down here. So if anybody really wants this, I'd be happy to give it to them and I can make it available, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to do a better job of it. For example, I had to do things like using regex to try and sort out the language code because I just could not make it work the way I wanted to do it. So I had to do a little bit of hacking here and there to get it to work the way I wanted to without using the AI capability. So it's not perfect by any means, and the AI is not going to do the job for you either, as I discovered. So you have to do a little bit of work here and there, but in general it works and it's quick, so it works for me. So now that I've explained the situation, let's just go over to Studio for a second and I'll show you in Studio what I've actually got set up here. So I've already created two projects. One contains the files only, and the second one just contains the files and folders, as I explained before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my script and I'm just going to, well, first of all, actually, I'm going to copy the path to the original projects in the Studio. Now I'm just going to press F1 on my keyboard because I have a shortcut in Total Commando that when I press F1, it copies the path to the selected folder. So I press F1 there. I then run the script, first of all, right click, which copies the path in, and then press enter. And that runs the first script. Then I'm going to go back here and F1 for the second one, run my script again, right click, enter. That's my scripts run. And if I now go into the localization office folder, I've got my two projects in there. In the first one, I've got the map files that were created for me, and if I open one up just so we can see what they look like, that one contains a map file for the three files that are in there. So this is the relative reference to the source files in my project and where they will be, and the second column contains the absolute reference to the German project files in the past that I also showed you before. And you can see that I've appended the language codes at the beginning, and I've also put them in a folder called DED, and that's because, or I intend to put them in a folder called DED because when I export the files, when I create the projects in the language offices, which we'll look at in a minute, that export is actually going to place the target files from that project in a DED folder in that location. So that's why I've added that map in there, and it keeps it all nice and tidy. And that same thing then applies to the other languages as well. So there's the French using the French language codes. So those are my map files for that one. And if I just open up the other folder, look at Spanish this time, you can see here I've got, again, same kind of thing, but this time there's a nested structure because, if you remember from the files at the beginning, I actually nested them in folders. So I need to know the path based on all those files being nested. That's the Spanish, and the only one I didn't show you yet is the Italian, so I might as well complete the job. And there's the Italian with all the Italian folders. So all of those were created very quickly, those map files, just within the script. And the other thing that the script has done is if I go to my translation offices that were empty, this time when I go into the folder, to the new projects folder, I've actually got, again, folders created with the same project name so that I know where I am. And if I navigate down into them, that one there has got the bilingual SDLXlib, but for French, and you can see I've appended the French to it. Now I didn't need to do that, but the reason I did was because if I decided to send these files off and around the place, which just many people do because it's convenient sometimes, it's easy for me to not lose track of it like this because I've got the language code at the beginning. That was why I did that. And in the files and folders, it should be the same thing. There we go, with the files being renamed but in the same folders. So all of those have been copied over by me running that script in just seconds. You can see the German is exactly the same. There we go. So they're essentially all done. So now I'm in a position to start the translation officers working on the translations to get them finished. So to make sure this video doesn't take too long, I'm just going to quickly prepare those projects and then I'll come back to Studio when they're done. And with a little bit of magic, here I have my 8 new projects. The first 4 relate to the files only, so that's the ones created from here. And the second 4 relate to the ones created from files and folders over here. So if you look at the paths for them, you can see that I've got my target languages and they're all separated into the folders, complete with the language codes, because I use language codes in the Translation Office folders, if you remember. So I'm going to come back up here again and we're going to go into the Translation Offices. And the reason for that is, if I just keep one open, is because at the moment we just have the SGLXLIFT files. But what I'm going to do is, after I've translated these files, I'll show you them translated in a second, I'm going to export the bilingual files, and the exported bilingual files I will go, I'm going to put into this folder here, so that I have them all in one place and I know as a localization engineer where I'm going to pick them up from, because these files could have been translated anyway, and all I'm really interested in is the exported bilingual files, because that's what I'm going to use for Perfect Match. So all the officers will be under instructions to come and put them in this location within the same folder that was created for their source files. So it's simple, straightforward. It should be fairly clear what they need to do. And if I just flick over to Studio, here's my localization office. As this customer, I created customers for each of the officers. So if I look at the French, there's the French. If I look at the Spanish, there's the Spanish. And if I open them up, this is the one that's in all the different folders. You can see the subfolders. And if I open these for translation, you can see they've now all been completely translated with a little bit of magic. And if I flick back to my projects and then go look at these ones too, you can see this has also all been translated. So what I'm going to do, I'll start with the French, because that's what I wanted to, I think because I was in the French folder, just so I can show you what happens. Yep, so we're in the French folder here, new projects, files only, and you can see only the bilingual files there. So I'm going to go to my Studio. Sorry, my mouse is not playing the game. Whoops, they're playing the game very nicely with me. And I'm going to go to Batch tab. Oh, that's the Spanish, sorry. French Office. And I'm going to run my batch tasks and export the files. And I'm going to export them to, conveniently, this location, which is correct. Translation Office is French, new projects, files only. And I want the latest bilingual version, which is what we are there. So I'm going to click on Finish and close. And if I come back to here, you can see that's created now an FR folder, and in there these are the updated bilingual files, fully translated, ready to go. And I'll do the same thing for the files and folders. So if I come back to here, select that one, run my batch tasks, export files, So bilingual version, France 004 project, files and folders, and finish. And close. That's my French folder that's now in this folder as well. And inside there I should have department, pass, and the files. Okay. So they're ready to go as well. And I just need to do the same things with the other languages, so I'll just do those quickly. I'll just leave them on here so you can just bear with me a second. I do the German office. I'll just do batch tasks, export files, next, Germany latest bilingual version, finish, close. I take the second German project, batch tasks, export files, next, Germany latest bilingual version, finish. Then I'll flick to the Italian office, pick the first one, batch tasks, export files, next, next, going to Italy, finish, close, pick the other one, batch tax, export files, next, next, Italy, files and folders, finish, close, and one more, the Spanish office, last but not least, batch tasks, export files, next, next, Spain bilingual version correct, close, and then the last one here, batch tasks, export files, next, next, Spain latest bilingual version, finish, close. And then I'm going to flick over back to my localization office, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new project, but I'm going to create a new project using, I'll just show you that these are all in there. If I go to Italy, new projects, files only, Italian. So exactly the same as it was for the French. All of these are populated. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new projects using the updated source. So the files that are in here, these are new files that have been given to me by my client with updated content. So I'm going to go back to Studio, and here what I'm going to do, I'm going to say Control N for new project. I'm going to use the same project names, but just annotate them with I'm going to append updated to the end, so then I keep them together nice and neatly in my folders. That works for me. It might not work for a more complicated setup, but it works for this example. Files only, updated. Then I go over here, pick up the files only, and drop them into Studio. If I can get it to drop in there, I've lost them. Drop them into Studio like that. Go to my General tab, select my customer. I forget which language I just picked. I've completely forgotten what language I picked. Oh, it doesn't matter. What am I talking about? It doesn't matter. I don't need to know the language at this point. Sorry, I'm confusing myself doing so many things at once. I just need to pick the customer. I don't need to know what language because I'm using my fixed template, which is going English into all 4 languages. This is me as a localization engineer. So you wouldn't normally do all these things together, and I'm not so good at multitasking. Okay, I'm going to go to I've got my TMs. I use the same TMs because they were in the templates for the local offices as well. So I make sure that I get everything that they did and it's up to date. In my perfect match, all I need to do now is pick the map files to get the bilingual files. So on the French, I click Add Matching File, Previous Documents from Map. I need to make sure that I'm in the right office. So let's just go to see, I'm in the localization office, Files Only, and we'll do the French first. So French. And open. Adds the French files. I'm going to go to Germany, add matching file, previous documents from match, the German. It'd be kind of nice if there was a way of doing this with just one map file that also contained the language files. It doesn't seem it would be too much hardship to have another column in there. But anyway, this is the way it works. That would be a nice enhancement if anybody wants to suggest it. I might suggest it myself. Italian, added, and then Spanish, add matching file, previous documents from map, and Spanish. Okay, and then I'll just finish at that point. Well, I'll just explain one other thing. So I could take the lock segments or keep the initial segment origin and status. So if this was a mid-project update, I would probably really take the initial segment origin and status, but I just want to make it really clear what was actually done before, and I'm going to use this lock segments because then you'll see the perfect match status in the in the translated files rather than the original status. So I'll click finish at that point. Runs through, has completed that bit, applies the perfect match, pre-translates the files, and it's done. And I close. There's my updated project, and if I open this one, we're in French at the moment. You can see this time they're no longer 100% complete. And if I open them up for translation, you can see all my perfect match is done. So I've got perfect match and locked for the ones that were translated before and have not changed. And where they've changed, where I've got a new line, for example, there is no translation at all, like in this one. And I'll just activate it so it's easier to follow, like in this one. And where I've changed the content so I get a TM match, you can see that I get a TM match. It's no longer a perfect match because it's going to need to be addressed. The only ones that are perfect match are the ones that have not changed and are exactly the same as they were before. So now I can give these back to the translation office, who then only has to deal with the bits that are not a perfect match. And the same thing would apply to the other files as well. I could show you just quickly. If we just flick over just to make sure it all works, I'll pick the Italian. Control A, open for translation. Same thing with the Italian, but it would be the same thing all through those files. And then if we go back to my projects and press Control N for a new project, and this time I'll create a 004 files and folders project. Updated. I drop my folders in there, so pick that one up, try and drop that into Studio like that. There's all my files in there. I go to my General tab, update my customer, go to my Perfect Match tab, expand that a little bit. This time you can see that we've got more detail because these are all nested in files and folders. But nonetheless, I can pick at the language level. Otherwise, it's grayed out. For example, if I show you, if I click on there and pick it up, it's grayed and you can't select it. So you must select the language. Previous documents from map. Make sure we go to the right folder, files and folders, FR, because I've made that mistake a few times and wondered why it didn't work. And then say open. 3 previously added. So if I include the subfolders, you can see them all like that. And if I go and do the Germany, previous documents from map, Germany, we do Italy, like that, and then finally Spain. Like that. And just to show you the difference, actually, because it's the same files, I just put them in different locations. This time I'll take the keep initial segment origin and status just so you can see the difference. So we won't be locking them, we won't be calling them perfect match. And I just finish at that point. When I open up the project, we'll do the French first. I can see them all because I'm including subfolders. That's why I can see them all. Control A. Open for translation, and this time you see they're not perfect match, but they're carrying the same status as they were previously. So if you'd actually even had fuzzy matches or 100% matches or whatever, it would take exactly the same status of that your files were before and then update them to here. So you could carry on translating this file without losing where you got to and what was fuzzy and what wasn't, so you have complete traceability. So which you use, the perfect match and locked, or the current status, is entirely up to you, depending on the needs of your project, really. But that's that. That's how the project match works. How perfect matching works using map files. So I hope that was helpful. Long, but I hope it was helpful.